Good afternoon and welcome to the Sam Lacrosse Show. Happy Monday. On June 22nd, 2020, I started my career as a business development consultant for Oracle Corporation in Boston, Massachusetts. Well renowned in the industry as the best sales training program in corporate America that was developed by former co-CEO Mark Hurd, I, along with hundreds of other bright-eyed and bushy-tailed recent college graduates, began my corporate career. My hopes of becoming a big shot so people would finally love and accept me, finally reaching an apex. The interesting thing was that when I took the job, I had no idea about anything about the company. I was a finance major in college. I was now supposed to sell things. I hardly knew how to adjust basic settings on my MacBook. I was supposed to inform customers on the latest cutting-edge features of software products. My entire career trajectory was set up on going into financial services. I was now the lowest man on the totem pole of the second largest big tech company in the world, next to Microsoft. I only knew the basic facts of the company that I'd signed up to work for 8 months earlier, one day before Thanksgiving in 2019. Oracle didn't have any commercials. They didn't advertise anywhere. The biggest instruction I got was from a former high school football player who I looked up to his great credit, helped coach me through the interview process. It almost didn't work. I had a manager throw my resume into the garbage because I performed so poorly in one of them, for example. Only by a miracle did I get the opportunity to enter into this great unknown of this company. My first experience in corporate America was on my onboarding call with about 150 other people just like me, most of whom were new hires. I took the call from my bedroom closet in Somerville, Massachusetts, the only place I could formally work. I was beyond broke and barely making money to pay my bills. I had gotten into credit card debt to finance my move. I had just burned all my bridges with the biggest bank in the entire world, JP Chase, and the biggest bank in the Midwest, Huntington, which would have nearly paid me nearly twice as much, and I turned them down 3 times. Meaning, I had to make this work. I had to dominate. I had to win. The call, to put it mildly, was unlike any I had ever been a part of in my life. I imagine it would have been disorienting enough, given that this was my first ever interaction and my first ever big boy job. What made it more so was that the COVID pandemic and the summer of 2020 were still raging. I got pulled over on the interstate entering Massachusetts, for example, because I hadn't got a Massachusetts license plate yet. The Highway Patrol had seen enough incidents of unmarked plates setting fire to places like Back Bay, Massachusetts, where the rioters were still looting stores. You had to walk with a mask on outside. I almost got pulled over by a cop when I was taking a run through Harvard Square. It was an odd time in many ways, to put it mildly. But what made it more odd was the almost horror movie-esque entrance I got upon entry. Knowing absolutely nothing about us, the trainers made a point to tell us all coddled, state school-educated new hires that we were quote-unquote special and the quote best. They outlined their DEI positions, which were followed by a roundtable of things like, quote, disability advocacy, quote, employee resource groups, or ERGs, or, quote, equity standards, all of which had been turned up to 1,000 in the aftermath of George Floyd. The company made me put up a virtual background to hide my, quote, divisive American flag. And I protested with a series of my own virtual backgrounds for the remainder of my entry-level tenure. I was almost so ridiculous, and I felt so absurd doing it, that it could have been straight out of a Jordan Peele film. It didn't feel right at all. But after the necessary hoop jumping, particularly post-George Floyd, as mentioned, I was in, and I learning all the ins and outs of the company I had just signed my life away to work for. The history of Oracle is a very interesting one. The company will be 50 years old in 2 years, a major feat for a company in the most innovative sector in the world. They've survived a lot: the mass adoption of the internet, for example, the dot-com bubble, the 2008 financial crisis, COVID, now the AI boom. I won't get into all the details here. But the highlights of its history matter immensely, particularly due to where the company currently stands. The first major event in the history of Oracle after it was founded by Larry Ellison and 2 others in 1977 was getting their first initial contract. And the organization who gave them their initial contract? The Central Intelligence Agency. Maybe you've heard of them before. The CIA, America's foremost intel service, was the organization who funded the initial growth of Oracle, which is now taking over the world as we speak. Oracle's deep ties to the intelligence community have always run very deep. The clandestine nature of their business, what they actually do, is very much tied to who they work with. And even back then, Oracle was a different technology company than most others. They did not make hardware products at all initially. Their niche was business-to-business software, mostly coming in the form of a database. Data and using data to improve your business was a completely foreign concept to most companies at the time. Filing cabinets and manila folders for most did the trick. Why would you need to pay some dork to do more work in organizing it? Moreover, unlike a computer, which Apple and Microsoft made, why would I pay for something I couldn't even see? The genius of Oracle was getting corporate America an inherently rigid structure to follow the old adage, skate to where the puck is going, not to where it currently is. More people were falling in love with computers by the minute, particularly after Apple released the Apple II as the first luxury consumer computer product. Ellison's point, along with people such as Bill Gates, was that in order to maximize computers, you had to maximize what went on inside computers. And speaking of Apple, it's also worth mentioning who Larry Ellison's best friend and closest friend in business was up until the time of his death: Steve Jobs. Jobs and Ellison were unbelievably close. They advised each other on business decisions. They watched each other's backs as the Silicon Valley boom exploded. Ellison saw so many screenings of Toy Story when Jobs was running Pixar that he wanted to throw up. Perhaps the biggest leg up that Jobs gave Ellison was their not-so-subtle favoritism he showed in their partnership of hardware and software. Was this partially because Jobs liked Ellison? Yes. Was it partly because Oracle made the best database in the world, particularly in comparison to Microsoft's SQL Server? Yes. But more importantly, was it also that Jobs absolutely couldn't stand Bill Gates? Unequivocally, yes. Thus, Apple became Oracle's biggest and most prominent customer after the initial project to help to modernize and pioneer the cutting edge of United States intelligence services. With Jobs becoming the most high-profile businessman in the world, his word carried a ton of weight. The people that associated with Jobs mostly did very well. The people who opposed Jobs, opposite of people potentially like Bill Gates, mostly didn't. There was no greater benefactor of association with Steve Jobs than Larry Ellison and Oracle. As the two companies at the forefront of the technology revolution kept ascending, as did corporate America, particularly when Ronald Reagan became president and threw the doors of regulations off of major corporations, including the tech companies. Profits boomed. Reinvestments were paramount in terms of keeping up with the competition. And where did corporate America at the time begin to reinvest most heavily? Technology. Oracle, having the best B2B software in the world for corporations, was in the right place at the right time. As the data and technology revolution boomed, Oracle was able to make incredible footholds into every major sector of the economy: banking, consumer products, healthcare, logistics, technology. Microsoft may have had individual consumers, but Oracle had the institutions who financed consumerism, i.e., their employees, particularly as the corporate work became the dominant strain and everyone started to become richer. As corporate America grew, so did their need for technology. Oracle kept building on their foundation, expanding and upselling it into new add-ons, products, and additional components like hardware and applications. They were so influential that they helped encourage corporations to finance data centers on site, which were a massive capital investment that took up massive resources. But they couldn't do anything about it. They were hooked on the necessary drug of futuristic technology. They couldn't say no now. The world had changed. They had to change with it. And due to this, Oracle's momentum remained largely unimpeded until the early 2010s. Since the 70s, the data market, interestingly enough, had been largely stagnant when it came to innovation. Your company gathered data, you bought software and hardware to store it in so you could access it. You expanded and bought more as you grew your business. Rinse and repeat. No one questioned it for the longest time. Could anything be done better? Could this be more efficient? What if we tried a different way? The one company that asked this question was, ironically, the one who fell behind the eight ball in the first place: Microsoft. Microsoft, after a horrendous CEO tenure by Steve Ballmer, in which he tried to make a competing phone product with Apple, was now helmed by a man almost no one knew but Bill Gates, the man who had helped hand-pick him, Satya Nadella, who still runs the company to this day. Nadella, to put it mildly, wanted to go in a completely opposite direction than Ballmer and the entire industry. Cloud computing. Quote, cloud has been a topic of discussion by a lot of people, yet no one can understand what it actually means. Cloud is so revolutionary and different from what was done before because before, companies had to pay outrageous sums of money to manage, pay for, and store their data. Now with the cloud, you can pay someone else to do it. This is why you don't see laptops come with massive hard drives and desktops anymore, for example. This makes a major difference for an individual consumer, but for a Fortune 500 company, try game-changing difference. Cloud software, tech companies taking on the burden of managing, storing, and utilizing data on behalf of non-tech companies, save corporate America billions in terms of labor, logistics, overhead, and everything in between. The concept was revolutionary. The only thing missing was a company to build out a cloud that could successfully handle that amount of data. Enter Microsoft. Under Nadella's leadership, Microsoft pivoted the entire business and their entire business to best serve this overwhelming obligation of corporations to manage data. And it was a massive gamble, and one that paid handsomely. Nadella's foresight and aggressive investment strategy paid massive dividends, skyrocketing Microsoft's profits and taking them out of the dismal Ballmer years and into the ones defined by a new golden age. Microsoft, also deeply entrenched in corporate America, immediately captured the vast majority of the market for cloud computing. And Oracle was caught completely flat-footed. Their hubris, defined by the hubris of their founder Larry Ellison, took them from the top of the food chain to bottom dweller. On top of that, the two people running the company, co-CEOs Safra Catz and Mark Hurd, were not technologists. They were business people. Catz was a finance expert and Hurd a sales and marketing savant. Not only were they now behind, they had no means at all of catching up. But to try, Oracle attempted to throw out a shoddy cloud product in the immediacy of what industry analyst and former Oracle marketing chief, mind you, Bob Evans calls the cloud wars. It flopped tremendously. So much so that people thought Oracle was a has-been, another dinosaur tech company that had been left in the dust and was set to die, like Hewlett-Packard. But all of these people underestimated one thing: the gigantic ego and shallowness of Larry Ellison. In all of this, Larry Ellison saw opportunity. Ellison, like many CEOs, had completely hollowed out his personal life. He was not in a happy marriage. He couldn't turn his brain off. He didn't care for his children and grandchildren enough to ride calmly off into the sunset like most do. The only thing that was on his mind was what he had dedicated his life to, making Oracle the most powerful company the world has ever seen. To prove this, Ellison began to throw his weight around once again. He knew that Oracle at its core wasn't a software company. It was a data company. Given that all software needed data, there was a chance to pivot. To do so, he gutted Oracle's cloud team and poached Amazon and Microsoft's, throwing them a blank check budget to better build a better product. And so they did. Oracle's core promise and competitive advantage throughout its lifespan was that it best handled quote-unquote mission-critical workloads, i.e. part of your tech stack that couldn't go down. For example, if you were ordering a coffee on your way to work and your Starbucks app didn't load, that would be a catastrophe. Oracle's proposition was that the other vendors had too weak of a technological foundation from a data level to handle those workloads at scale. And Oracle, as always, would be the one to fill the gap. In addition, Oracle would offer their former core technology stack complete with platforms and applications in the cloud, being the first vendor in the space to do so. And it was a tough sled from the jump. After Oracle's botched first attempt, trust was scarce. Progress was still made, but ever slowly. At this rate, Oracle would still be left in the dust. However, after years of toil, Oracle finally struck gold. Oracle's promise of securing mission-critical data was possible in the cloud, but the potential for it was not fully realized until a small organization, by the way, the one that I was a part of, I saw this firsthand, did a then small deal with a little-known company in San Francisco with a far different business model: AI. OpenAI's ChatGPT had just come out. NVIDIA was still not a well-known company, much less one of the top 10 greatest companies by financial and market cap in the world. But they both had the same problem. They couldn't find a middleman that could bridge the hardware of NVIDIA with the software of a core AI business model like ChatGPT. They had tried it on other clouds, and they couldn't take it. Given that this was where all the major technology investment was going in Silicon Valley after ChatGPT, this bottleneck had the potential to cripple the AI business in America before it even got off the ground. Enter Oracle. With that initial deal, Oracle cemented itself as the only major cloud computing provider that could handle core AI businesses in an era where trillions of angel investment and venture capital were flowing. Little by little, Oracle began to chip away at the AI startup market, winning deal after deal that began to send tremors through the cloud marketplace. But the earthquake came when Ellison convinced his mentee, Elon Musk, to throw his AI company's data and his AI, Grok, and XAI above Oracle software. And so he did. Ellison could convince Musk of anything. He did so when he encouraged him to buy Twitter and turn it into X, if you didn't know that. The XAI deal, as well as the partnership with NVIDIA, made Oracle the go-to vendor for anyone who wanted to make it big in AI. In fact, Oracle and NVIDIA were helping to fund joint investment projects with each other, as well as venture capital firms such as Andreessen Horowitz. They knew that in order to dominate the future of business, they needed to forge an unbreakable partnership. Fast forward 3 years, and Oracle is, in my view, the most powerful company in the entire world, even more so than OpenAI. Why? Because OpenAI needs Oracle. Oracle doesn't need OpenAI. Just ask the $300 billion, yes, you heard that right with a B, deal that Oracle signed with them last month that sent their shares through the roof. or ask Microsoft or Google or Amazon or any of the, quote, major cloud providers, all of whom are now buying from Oracle. Oracle has single-handedly monopolized the AI market, whether the AI market wants to admit it or not. No one gets to where they want to go without talking with Oracle first. So why does this matter? Well, for starters, it's the most underreported business story of the past half decade, at least. That would be enough. But it also matters because Larry Ellison is seeing this as an opportunity for something greater, his time in the sun. Ask yourself, up until very recently, what did you know about Larry Ellison, about Oracle? Did you know any of the facts that I mentioned? I would argue in most cases the answer is no. Larry Ellison is the most low-profile power player in the most dynamic business market the world has ever seen. He's been that way for 50 years. He's waited his turn. He's watched his best friend become potentially the most famous entrepreneur ever. He envied him for what he had. He tried to lie to himself by dating foreign supermodels and making money. It clearly hasn't worked. The only thing that is left, the only thing that is available for someone like Larry Ellison to maintain hold of, is something that he now has more than ever. Power. And not just power, but the greatest amount of power in the history of big tech. This is not hyperbole. Larry Ellison helped to pioneer the COVID contract tracing system. I watched him deliver a speech in Las Vegas personally where he said he wanted to create a universal healthcare database, all pioneered, of course, by his technology. He purchased the largest health tech company in the world, Cerner, a couple of years ago. The largest amount of healthcare data is now possessed in Larry Ellison's servers, now being run and tested on his AI models that he's selling to Silicon Valley and other corporations who are wanting to leverage AI for attaining power and profit. And that's not all. Last year, he told Tony Blair's demonic foundation, much similar to George Soros, that he and his partners are building AI that is going to be used to surveil American citizens and citizens of the world. He said it would make them more, quote-unquote, compliant and obedient, kind of like Klaus Schwab, only running a tech company. China does the same thing right now in their social credit system. Seeing as Larry Ellison just acquired TikTok, if you didn't know that, China's biggest company and a spy organization in and of itself, maybe he stole the idea from them. Or perhaps he lobbied the Trump administration for easier treatment. He fundraised heavily for them, along with the rest of the so-called tech right during his last campaign. He's funding the acquisition through his son, David Ellison, of CBS News, Paramount, and now potentially CNN. He's directly selling tech software for drone technology to the Israeli military as they commit a genocide in Gaza. After his recent OpenAI deal, his net worth skyrocketed by $100 billion in a single day, briefly passing his pupil, Elon Musk, as the richest man in the world. Larry Ellison is now the most powerful man in the world. It's not Donald Trump. It's not Vladimir Putin. It's not even George Soros. The man who has the gold makes the rules. The man who has all the gold right now is Larry Ellison. Under his watch, America is quickly morphing into a technocracy, where unelected big tech mongers rule the roost, boss our elected officials around, and tell the rest of us to shut up and obey. We as Americans cannot and should not stand for this. We have rights in this country. We have the right to choose how we are ruled, not that have an 80-year-old sad billionaire who wants to impose his delayed midlife crisis on us. No one knows this is happening, probably because Larry Ellison has told a large portion of those who should tell us what is happening to shut up. But we can't, and we aren't. To defeat tyranny, you first have to understand when one is rising. But when you understand one is rising, we ourselves must rise to the occasion to fix it. Okay, so after that heartening monologue, so I do think it's important to say this, and we are now suddenly finding ourselves as Americans, as value-driven people, those who watch my show, those who listen to my show, those who watch this channel, we are living in a technocracy. And so, and it's not similar to, or just siloed to Larry Ellison. I'm going to talk about a lot of people in the show. But just think about where we've been over the last year. Like Elon Musk at one point, and I'm very Musk neutral. I really don't care. I think he's probably a good person, more of a decent person than most people, but I don't know. He was running rampant with all of our government data in the federal government. He had it. Private citizen right there. Personal advisor to President Trump before their blow up and everything else like that. He had all of our government data. And Donald Trump was like, here you go. Take it. Do your thing. Go crazy. You know, Sam Altman, who runs OpenAI, Larry Ellison, Peter Thiel, are now working directly with the government, with the federal government, the largest systems of database. Oracle, by the way, has a large federal government division on all of our data. And so, like, think about, I'm watching this, I've been watching a lot of stuff about 9/11 recently, and I've been learning a lot more about kind of the specifics of what happened or maybe what didn't happen, etc. I'm not here to propose a theory on 9/11, but like, you know, one of the biggest things that I've written actually about this for a long time. Like, I remember learning about the Patriot Act, and I was, 4 years old or whatever when it was passed. But the Patriot Act was the greatest invasion of privacy, the greatest violations of civil rights that are defined in the Bill of Rights by American citizens ever. Like by far, like it's like you should read it if you haven't read it. It is remarkably invasive and trods over our rights like it's nothing. They run roughshod over our rights. But what's happening now with the tech right and with all of these CEOs and powerful people kind of just getting their hands on our data, and we're just being farmed out and being made into little data points to everybody else, it makes that seem like peanuts. Like, it makes the Patriot Act and that invasion of our privacy seem incredibly small. All the powerful people in the world in the technology space seem to have all of our data now. They're all sharing it. The government has it. They're sharing it with big tech, etc. So, like, I think it's worth answering the question, like, how does this happen, or how did this happen? And to maybe give our technocratic overlords some grace here, I would argue that the reason why it happened is partly because it needed to. And hear me out on this. I know it's going to kind of sound wild, but hear me out. So there is a point where innovation in anything is necessary. And so our government, as we have seen over the last couple of years, is remarkably inefficient. It's inefficient, which is why so many people were so excited about the promise of Doge, and why Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy and all the people that were involved with Doge, they were so excited about it. It actually had bipartisan support among the citizens of America. They were like, yeah, the government needs to get smaller. We need to innovate. We need to trim. Why are we operating on computer systems that are 25 years old? We're the United States federal government. Why is this happening? So our government is not innovative at all. Partly that is by design, and we should be grateful for that, because if people could overhaul and change the government, everything about the government, that would also be a problem. But it's also not a sustainable way to run a country if everything in the government is running unbelievably slow. That's just not the way we should go about our business. And so there was a need for, I would argue, for the private sector and our best and brightest to work with the government to make things better. And, a lot of people, I think when Trump was announcing Doge, he said it was going to be the Manhattan Project of our time, which clearly flopped, and that was a massive fail and whatever with Ramaswamy and Musk and Trump and all those people. They did not. That was not the Manhattan Project of our time, as it turns out. But I thought, like, when you look at the Manhattan Project, and if you've seen Oppenheimer, and if you're a nerd like me who likes to read all this stuff, you saw the best and brightest working with the government. Albert Einstein, J. Robert Oppenheimer, like all these other people that were brilliant in their fields of physics and the military and all these sorts of things, science. And by the way, that movie is so terrifying just because when it's about nuclear war and the people that wanted to use it to make weapons and everything else, it's really everything that's kind of wrong with our country in a movie, and also that's, good with our country in a movie. So if you haven't watched it, please watch it. It's great. Some of those people are terrifying inside of that movie, and we should recognize that. And some of the people that are doing this right now currently are terrifying as well. And so, but it is a good thing that we were able to have our best and brightest work with the government. Now, I don't agree with the atomic bomb. We shouldn't have made it. It was, that's neither here nor there. I don't want to get into a conversation about nuclear weapons. But it's a good thing when someone like Elon Musk or Albert Einstein says, I want to help for free with the government, essentially. And that should be celebrated, I think. Like, I mean, we should, when a very smart person or a very good person says, I want to lend my services to the government, whether that's serving in the military like my friend Dylan did, or whether it's you're the CEO of a tech company and say, I want to help make the government better. I think that's a good thing, and I think we should celebrate that. But we have the classic example of this. I think this is probably the largest example of this, maybe at scale, that we've seen in recent American history, is you give people an inch and they take a mile, which is exactly what has happened right now with our big tech overlords. and our venture capital people and all the people inside of Silicon Valley right now. So our technocrats have been given an inch by Donald Trump. They have infiltrated the White House. They have infiltrated our government. They have infiltrated our institutions. David Sachs, et cetera, everything else like that. And we'll get to all those people in a second. So they have now wormed their way, weaseled their way into the government. And so, like, for example, you have people like David Sachs, who is now largely dictating policy on AI and on cryptocurrency. Like special liaison counsel, whatever. Peter Thiel, we'll talk about him later, Larry Ellison, Sam Altman. They're just getting massive government contracts, massive donations from all of, not donations, were paid for by us to do everything that they want to do, not necessarily what the citizens want to do. And there's been conspiracies about they're controlling J.D. Vance and they're grooming J.D. Vance to be president. It's because J.D. Vance worked with Peter Thiel. He knows a lot of these guys very well. He knows David Sachs very well, etc. I don't think that's true, by the way. Just because someone works in big tech like J.D. Vance, and maybe this is my own bias because I love J.D. Vance, but that doesn't really ring true to me. But the point of all of this is that what we thought is just someone helping someone win an election or someone do like an innovative government project or something, has resulted in a new kind of faction of our ruling class. And I would argue the most powerful faction of our ruling class, which is institutional tech nerds who are kind of on the outside, are now on the inside. They're in a more powerful institutional position than ever before. And it's not even close because they've always been the rebels and the renegades and everything like that. But now they've become adopted into this kind of quasi-NGO lobbying group, government blob, etc. That's really troubling, I think, when you really look into it. And I think the reason as to why this has not been checked more is the core flaw of Donald Trump as a politician, whether that's with big tech, whether that's with, loser non-Republicans like Lindsey Graham, whether that's with, people, foreign leaders, whatever, is that Donald Trump is prone to flattery. Donald Trump is a man who loves a compliment. And I love a compliment, and a lot of you probably love a compliment. Maybe you're a words of affirmation person. That's fine. But I think it is important to be very honest that this did not happen under Joe Biden's watch. This did not happen under Donald Trump's first term. This did not happen under Barack Obama. This did not happen under George Bush. Now, weapons manufacturers, political lobbying, racial groups, NGOs, yes, all of that. But the embrace of the tech right, the embrace of this new faction of our conservative, quote unquote, ruling class, which is, it's ridiculous because these guys are not MAGA at all. Like if you think that Mark Andreessen and Elon Musk and Sam Altman and Mark Zuckerberg and Larry Ellison are like MAGA Republicans, you gotta get your eyes checked. These guys are not MAGA at all. I know MAGA people, they are not them. And in fact, MAGA people that are defined by probably Tucker Carlson, Steve Bannon, like those type of people, they are very distrustful of the tech right, and they should be. And so, but they were largely the key, in big part, to him winning the election. One of the keys to him winning the election was the embrace of the tech bros on the quote-unquote right, which they aren't. They're not MAGA. But they have been, our tech CEOs, our tech overlords, the big tech people, they have been looking for a way into the cool kids club, where people like Donald Trump are, the political class, the institutionalization of power. They have been looking for a way into the cool kids club for a very long time. They have been ostracized for a very long time. And I know like Facebook and Chris Hughes, who was then one of Mark Zuckerberg's right-hand men at Facebook, like they helped Barack Obama win his first term with social media and everything else like that. Trump won his first term largely because of the Facebook algorithm and the Twitter algorithm and things like that. But they have never been on the inside. Like the wolves have now entered the pen. The foxes have now entered the hen house. And they have all the permission in the world because of one guy, Donald Trump. If Donald Trump were to say, nope, I don't want you here, the buck would stop. And then to go back to hating him like they did before. But Trump needed them, maybe. I think he probably did. And so he said, okay, I'll make some concessions. I'll give you guys some government contracts, etc. And now they are on the inside. And that is why we are slowly becoming, and quickly becoming, I would argue, a technocracy. And that is very troubling. And, Donald Trump needs to repent for that. And, we need to call that out more, because it would have not happened if Donald Trump would have allowed it to happen. But he did, and we're here. And so we have to deal with the consequences of that. And we need to talk honestly about that. So I mentioned this earlier, but Larry Ellison's son, because Larry Ellison is not just a tech person right now. He's actually rapidly becoming more of a tech person. And this is, I think, what the left, to give the left some credit, this is what they talk about, like the Bernie Sanders, the billionaires, like all these people that, that say like that. This is where they have a point. Actually, this is where Bernie Sanders, I think, has a point. This is where Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has a point. This is where Zoran Mondani has a point. And, we should heed their words on this. This is where I kind of become a leftist in some ways. So David Ellison, who's Larry Ellison's son, no one knows this, by the way. I just found this out a couple weeks ago. Glenn Greenwald has done a really good reporting on this. David Ellison now runs Paramount. He runs Paramount Pictures. He runs the largest movie studio in the entire world. He just bought rights to the company. They just did I believe, a $7 billion deal with the UFC, who is, again, closely aligned with Donald Trump. The fastest growing sport in America, UFC. And they have access to some of the biggest franchises in the world. All the Christopher Nolan films, the Godfather franchise, Yellowstone, all the Taylor Sheridan stuff. It's all available on Paramount Plus and with Paramount features. They own, by the way, CBS News. Also, they own CBS. Survivor, which I love, by the way. I'm going to watch it tonight after I record the show. So Larry Ellison is now, not only does he have a familial tie to a person who runs a massive media company, he is now in position to take over TikTok. That deal is going to go through soon. And I remember when I was at Oracle, we were talking about buying TikTok and taking over the American branch of TikTok and the TikTok algorithm. So now it is going to be sold to Oracle. Larry Ellison and David Ellison are now installing, we talked about this a couple weeks ago, Barry Weiss, who is a propagandist, a Zionist propagandist, to run CBS News. And now he is even in talks to buy CNN, apparently. So think about that. He has the fastest growing sports organization in the world, owned by his son. Largest film studio in the world, owned by his son. Largest social media app for young people, owned by his son. The biggest pro-Israel propagandist and now independent mainstream news, maybe outside of Ben Shapiro, running one of the largest corporate media institutions in the world, and now buying another large corporate media institution in the world. Like, if alarm bells aren't going off in your head, I don't know what's going to cause alarm bells to go off in your head. Like, that's very concerning, very concerning. And in addition, a lot of people don't like this. He is now doing contracts with AI and tracing for drone technology in Gaza. Larry Ellison is incredibly close to the Israeli government. Incredibly close to the Israeli government. They have long ties to, again, foreign intelligence, domestic U.S. intelligence, everything like that. Safra Katz, who ran Oracle when I was there, she's a remarkable CEO. She did a great job. She ran a great company. And she she just stepped down a couple weeks ago, and now Mike Cecilia and Clay McGurk, who run the GBU unit and who runs Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, which is the big cloud explosion that's going on, this pioneer in the AI boom, are now co-CEOs. So I don't know what's going to happen with Safra. I hope she's still, or for their sake, I hope she's still involved. She's a smart woman. But Safra Katz is Jewish. She was on Trump's transition team, as was Larry Ellison, I believe. And they have been very involved in this type of lobbying for a long time. And by the way, I want to get this out of the way right here. This is not a Jews control the media thing. It's not. But it is a power thing. It is a power thing. And this is something that we need to pay attention to. We need to pay attention to this. With all the talk about breaking up Google, breaking up Microsoft, or maybe not breaking up Microsoft, breaking up Google, breaking up Facebook, breaking up all these other things, I am for that. I want Facebook broken up. I want Google broken up. I want all these companies broken up. I don't believe monopolies are good for America. We are going to have the same conversation about Larry Ellison. We need some people with balls of steel in the government to say this is a problem. We need to fix that problem. We need to adjust this problem, and we cannot let this happen. So I want to focus on the Israel thing a little bit more too, because this is very important. So as we have seen over the last now almost 2 years, I think it's coming out next week, so it'll be 2 years from October 7th, which was Israel's 9/11. It was a horrible thing that happened. Many butchered people, raped women, killed people, bunch of bad things. That's not, like, it's horrible, absolutely horrible. And Israel had a right to react, right to respond, etc. But as we've seen since October 7th, there is no more powerful lobby in the world than the Israel lobby. Pat Buchanan talked about this. John Mearsheimer's talked about this. Jeffrey Sachs has talked about this. Lots of people have talked about this. Lots of people have taken this too far. Again, Jews control the media. Stop it. Like Jews control the banks. Stop it. Don't go too far. But they have run, the Israel lobby and the Zionist propagandists in this country, they have run the most effective campaign at silencing the truth I have ever seen. And by the way, far greater than anything with wokeism. Like, shut up, racist has nothing to do with shut up, anti-Semite. That's way more powerful, way more financial backing, more institutional power, way more foreign power that's involved with this, with the Israel lobby. And this is largely due to the fact why this has teeth and why wokeism, it's not dead, but it's way less amplified than it was. This is largely due to the people who are involved with the Israel lobby, who want to finance wars and have interest over our government that have control over media and technology, like Larry Ellison, like Peter Thiel, like David Sachs. There are many, like, by the way, Ted Cruz, like Lindsey Graham, like all of them. And so it is a gag order that is being imposed by big tech, by people like Larry Ellison, who is wanting to silence the truth. That's what this is. It's not anything else but this. So get the media, get technology. By the way, there has been, so Larry Ellison knows this. And Larry Ellison's probably always known this, which is why he's been so involved in this, kind of in the shadow realm behind the scenes. And so in his pursuit of power, he is joining up with the deep state of lobbying interests, of the Israel lobby, of big tech, of government, of Donald Trump, of all these entities, to play a key role in setting the tone and setting the narrative in this country. That is what this is for. He controls the AI models. The buck stops with him on the AI models, because it does. They're bottlenecked in the AI market with Oracle. And he wants to change the narrative to serve his interests and become a quasi-shadow president. People thought Elon Musk was a shadow president. Larry Ellison's a shadow, like an actual shadow president. Because when you go down the list of all of the things that Larry Ellison has achieved, very recently, by the way, this is very new stuff. This is over the last year that all of this has happened. Last year, 2 years. It's like that chart when, you see when Warren Buffett's made 90% of his wealth in the past 10 years because of compound interest. This is the career compound interest of Larry Ellison, just shooting up. Again, he's the most powerful man in the world for a reason, because he is now in a position, more than anybody I've ever seen outside of government, to set the tone and the narrative of our country, to control the narrative, adjust the narrative in our country by getting a propagandist like Bari Weiss, which is what she is, to run CBS News, by shutting down TikTok, which, by the way, is the largely pro-Gaza. They're the only ones, except for X, to Elon Musk's credit, to show what's actually going on in Israel and in Gaza. You want to know why young people have turned against Israel? People like me who have turned against what Israel's doing in Gaza? Open your TikTok algorithm and watch the things that young people like me have watched. It's got to stop. If you're in a campaign for power over institutions, got to shut that down. Larry Ellison's going to shut it down. There's nothing to see here. Kids aren't getting blown up. Buildings aren't getting blown up. Israel isn't killing journalists. The IDF isn't killing innocent people. They're not starving the population. They're not committing a genocide. Shut up. There's nothing going on here. Nothing to see here. So it's not necessarily a monopolization of media. It's not necessarily a monopolization of technology. What Larry Ellison is doing is effectively a monopolization of communication. And communication is not, quote unquote, the media, although media has a part of it. It is corporate media. It is social media. It is AI generated content. It is the supply chain of AI content. So this is a cabal of interests in terms of communication in America. It's coming together in real time, and we need to be very vigilant and very careful of it, because I mean, if this happens, that is, I'll just say we're in trouble if this happens. We are in deep trouble if this happens, because we need to be very, very vigilant, very, very careful of what is going on here, because it's very concerning and very scary when you have any entity, whether government, non-government, private citizen, public citizen, whatever, when they have this much control over this many institutions and they're accumulating power en masse and their financial ability is skyrocketing en masse, we've got to be careful of it. We've got to be careful of it. And Larry Ellison is the chief and the face of that franchise right now. So we need to, again, be honest about it, but we need to talk about it and have that conversation, because no one else is having it. And if we are not careful, we will lose everything: honesty, communication, knowledge, etc. And that can't happen. It just can't. So Peter Thiel, on the other hand, one of my favorite people, Peter Thiel is also, I would say, other than Larry Ellison, is probably the most powerful technocrat in the government right now that's working with the government. So again, no one knows about this. So that I've heard of, like, no one's talked about this. So Peter Thiel, who people are like, oh my gosh, Peter Thiel, like angel investor, smart guy, demonic, evil person is Peter Thiel. Peter Thiel has gotten a blank check from the Trump administration to build a massive government database, a holistic government database with Palantir, which is his new company that he runs with Alex Karp. I saw Alex Karp speak in London earlier this year. So what is Palantir? No one knows what Palantir is. No one knows what Palantir is. But I do. I knew people that did deals with them when I was at Oracle. I knew people, or I've done research into the company. They are, to put it in layman's terms, they are the largest big data company in the world that no one knows anything about. They are deep AI people, deep data people. And he's using a private company with a private technology, Palantir, which is, by the way, a reference to a Lord of the Rings artifact. And so it's whatever. And so I won't even get into the whole Sauron eye thing, Mark of the Beast, whatever. That'll be later on. But anyways, and he is using that to import that technology into our government to build a massive tracking system and federal database. And Trump's just like, yep, go ahead. And I'm like, wait, what? What? Like no conversations at all about the massive violation of our rights that is, by the way, clearly happening in multiple domains, but particularly in this case with Peter Thiel. And nothing is being remotely discussed as important in this conversation, like at all, to all of us. Like there's no bill passed, no open bid for this contract, nothing, just Peter Thiel, go ahead and take it. No government oversight, no anything, no congressional hearing, nothing. Like, that's bananas. That's absolutely bananas. That's nuts that is allowed to happen. No bid contract, basically like Dick Cheney with Halliburton back in the Iraq War. Just go ahead and just do whatever you want. It's like, we've already tried that once. It didn't work. It actually turned out to be a catastrophe. And that was about building, mess halls and furniture and weapons also. But this is AI, data, human stuff. And by the way, at the same time as well, Peter Thiel is funding the Israeli weapons program. He is funding the Israeli military. He's funding the IDF with Larry Ellison, with other people, as well as other wars around the world. The war in Ukraine, by the way, which is not, if you watch footage of the war in Ukraine, it's like, what I've compared it to is, if you guys have seen the third Transformers movie, and I totally understand if you haven't seen the third Transformers movie, but it was very formative to my years growing up, so I've seen the third Transformer movie many times. I have a category, side note, of bad movies being a genre of movies. Star Wars 3 is a great bad movie. Star Wars 2, or not Star Wars 2, Transformers 2, Transformers 3 are great bad movies. And so in Transformers 3, the Decepticons, they end up taking over Chicago, and they basically kill all the citizens and whatever. And there's a scene in Chicago where, in the end of the movie in Chicago, where I think they send, the United States government, they send in the military, they send in planes, and basically Decepticons, the bad guys, robots, they kind of come out of nowhere and just shoot the planes out of the sky like it's nothing. That's what's going on in Ukraine right now. It's not men on the ground, like with rifles in hand, getting in trenches, marching in straight lines, even guerrilla warfare like we saw in the War on Terror. It is drone technology. It is drones wiping out entire towns, villages, deployments of military forces, artillery. And so that, and by the way, that's all powered by something. What is that powered by? Palantir. Palantir. That deep AI is powering this drone technology that is using to slaughter hundreds of thousands, millions of men in Russia and Ukraine and help commit this genocide in Gaza. That is what is happening. And if that weren't enough, Peter Thiel is giving lectures on the Antichrist in public. I'm not making this up. Look this up. He's giving a 4-part lecture series on the Antichrist. Like from Revelation in the Bible. Peter Thiel's an atheist, by the way. He wants to freeze his body and live forever. Look it up. So now we have a man, Peter Thiel, who worships the demonic, who worships the occult, in one of the most powerful positions in all of the United States federal government, revolutionizing our back-end database for the federal government with almost no oversight. Like what is going on here? What the heck is going on here? This is so crazy. I don't know if you got, I'm getting frustrated by this, but this is so nuts that this is allowed to happen. So nuts. It is unbelievable that this is allowed to happen. Actually unbelievable. Actually unbelievable. It's just, it's bananas that we are allowing this to happen. And this is why technology can do a lot of things. It can do a lot of things. By the way, I'm happy that AI is out there. I'm happy that I have my iPhone that's on the floor, that I'm talking to you on this camera, that I'm doing this teleprompter and my notes on this computer. It can do a lot of things. But the one thing that technology, like any tool, cannot do, is make you a moral actor. It cannot make you a good person. And we are learning that in very real time and in very plain fashion with all of these tech billionaires. They may be smart, and I'm sure they are. They are, because they built really great companies and really great technology. But intelligence does not correlate to wisdom. It just doesn't. They are very smart, but they're not wise. So Romans 1 is one of my favorite chapters in the whole Bible. So Romans 1, I believe verse 21 says, thinking they were wise, they became fools, and they gave themselves up to their idolatry, their false righteousness, etc. This is exactly what is happening right now with our tech bros and the people that are empowering them, like Donald Trump, like the administration, everything else. They have the tech right, the tech bros have so convinced themselves that they are so smart, that they're so moral, that they're so in it to win it. And with help from several others in their friend group, with help from people like Mark Zuckerberg and all the other people that are financing it. Like, oh my gosh, like, big tech, whatever, rah. But they don't know. One of my favorite things that Mark Driscoll has ever said, one of my favorite sayings that he's ever said is that we have the majority of people now that are educated beyond their intelligence. And I love that. I think it's so true. And that is exactly what is happening with our current leadership class, with this sector of big tech overlords. Their IQ points are probably very high. I don't know. But they are not wise. They're very unwise, actually. Very unwise. And you see this with the way that they live. And I don't think this is all of them, by the way, but you see this certainly with Larry Ellison. Like, the wise thing for a 78-year-old man to do is not to try to become the shadow president and take over the world. The wise thing is to maybe reconcile with your kids and your grandchildren, maybe stop dating a 30-something Chinese woman who's probably a spy for TikTok, just calling that out there. Maybe, reconcile, get to know your grandkids a bit more. He bought, by the way, Larry Ellison bought all of a Hawaiian island. He bought all of Lanai. Like, maybe, enjoy that and focus on various things. No. Like, get married to a woman that, actually loves you. Peter Thiel, maybe, actually accept Christ, not lecture on the Antichrist. Maybe do that. But, again, they're not wise. They're too smart for their own good. They're too smart to be wise. And again, we have to call this out. We absolutely have to. It is not an option. As Christians, as value-driven people, we cannot let this slide, because if it runs unchecked, this Peter Thiel thing especially, with this Palantir, with this government database that's basically turning into a social credit system, in combination with Larry Ellison's work behind the scene, with him controlling this narrative, with him controlling all these methods and these levers of communication, with him funding the AI boom with, Oracle software, we are going to end up with a social credit system, not unlike they have in China. So for those who are not familiar, a social credit system where data points are gathered from a centralized government database like the one Peter Thiel is building, like the one that Larry Ellison is helping to build. And the government tracks how, quote unquote, good of a citizen you are. Larry Ellison said to Tony Blair, this is on video, I posted on my LinkedIn and on my Instagram the other day, and on my X, we want obedient and compliant citizens. Well, who defines that? Larry Ellison, Peter Thiel, the federal government, who take orders from Peter Thiel and Larry Ellison. And so what happens then? Well, you haven't been obedient enough, so we won't give you a loan for a mortgage. Well, you're not allowed to drive as much this week. We're going to reduce your emissions. We won't. You're not allowed to buy meat. You have to buy the plant-based stuff. Eat the bug. This is World Economic Forum stuff, by the way. Eat the bugs. You'll own nothing and be happy. Whatever. And so what this does is it removes, when you become obsessed with technology, you reduce everything to data. You reduce everything to a data point, a point on a chart, a graph, something, whatever, a visualization tool. And that is what our tech bros see us as. They do not view us as human beings. They don't. No one would treat a human being like a data point, but they treat all of us like data points. They view us as subhuman, less than human. Because, one, they don't know what a human is, really. They don't view us having a soul. Again, they're only, what have you done for me? I'm going to chart this. I'm going to put this here. I'm going to use this to say that about you and this and that and whatever. So this reduction of citizenship has already been totally thrown aside in our culture. But this reduction of citizenship to just being a data point it's remarkably troubling. It's remarkably troubling. Particularly when you have open, basically Satanists like Peter Thiel that are creating it, which is obviously demonic and evil and not good. So We need to talk about this. It's not wrong to raise these questions, to talk about it, and to come at it from a Christian worldview, from a value-driven worldview. There's no other way to tackle this, because what are you going to say if you're not coming at it from that worldview? If value-driven people, if Christian people do not stand up and say, this is wrong because of X, Y, and Z reason, then no one will think it's wrong. But it is wrong. And we need to say that it's wrong. So I want to end here. I think that the conversation that really drives this point about the tech bros not understanding really humanity, human nature, what it means to be a person, this transhumanist cult that they've kind of created for themselves, is a person who really does authentically understand it, and that's Tucker Carlson. Tucker Carlson has talked a lot about the soul. He's talked a lot about human beings and what human value means and what life means and what life should be about and why we should pivot our lives in a certain way. And so he had a very viral conversation with Sam Altman. I recommend everyone watch it or listen to it. He interviewed Sam Altman, who again is the CEO of OpenAI. A lot of people view him as the most powerful person in tech right now. I don't agree with that, but Sam Altman's certainly up there. And so Sam Altman has very recently been the wonderkind of Silicon Valley. He's the next big star. He's the person that started the AI stuff, because OpenAI created ChatGPT, for those who don't know. So, but when they were talking, when Sam Altman and Tucker Carlson were talking, you realize just how dumb Sam Altman is about about the most important things, really. And so Sam Altman is completely foolish when it comes to how life actually works and the limits of his own intelligence when it comes to life and how life actually functions. Again, Sam Altman is a smart guy, quote unquote. He's smart, quote unquote. But he's so dumb when it comes to the permanent things, as Russell Kirk says. He's so dumb when it comes to matters of actual importance like the soul, eternity, morality, truth. And so the conversation really peaked when they, because Tucker and Altman went back and forth, and they essentially kind of talked a lot about what AI really is. And so what Tucker says, and I think this is the correct answer, AI at its core, at a philosophical value core, is an attempt by Silicon Valley to play God while not believing in the actual God, the God of the Bible. And no one in Silicon Valley can refute that argument. They've tried, but they just can't do it. Watch the interviews. Watch Sam Altman on Tucker Carlson's show. He can't do it. And I think the other person that really made a great point about this was Jordan Peterson. So Jordan Peterson, in his book, We Who Wrestle with God, he's talked about this very publicly multiple times. By the way, please be praying for Jordan Peterson. He's healing from his an immune condition right now. So, God knows we need him back. So praying for Dr. Peterson. And so anyway, so he essentially has made the point that AI is like the Tower of Babel. So if you guys don't know the Tower of Babel story, it's way back in the book of Genesis where the peoples of the world, in kind of a globalist rebellion against God, they build this massive tower to look down upon everybody else and play God, and God smites it and blows it up and sends and scatters people throughout the world, and confuses their language so they will never understand each other. He creates the nations, essentially. He creates he doesn't create a world government, he creates individual governments and individual people, like individual ethnicities, races, countries, cultures, etc. And so Jordan Peterson is basically said that AI is the new Tower of Babel, this kind of cabal of elites that are coming together to kind of play God, which is absolutely right if it's used improperly. And the reason for this is because the tech bros want to use it to make themselves seemingly all-powerful, which is why they're making the plays that they are to infiltrate the government, to make themselves known, among other things, to build these social media followings, all this sort of stuff. And that is really what, like, AI is fine, it's cool, and everyone's like, oh my God, AI. But it's really a very human desire of the tech bros to say, like, look at me. It's the pinning of the macaroni sculpture on the refrigerator. Like, look at me, be proud of me, I did something. And there's lots of talk about, like, is AI demonic? Is it the Antichrist? Is it the mark of the beast, etc.? I've heard that from many people who I was like, and normally when people bring up the Antichrist and the mark of the beast, and I'm like, okay, like, is it, let's calm it down there. But I'm like, I've had a lot of people bring it up that I really trust about faith stuff, and I'm like, okay, well, maybe I should take that argument more seriously. Maybe AI is the Antichrist. I don't know. I don't know until it's named. But it also might not be. Like, that's the biggest thing. Like, it could be, it could not be. And so the biggest thing that is missing from the conversation about AI, about technology, about this new technocracy that's being erected in America right now, is humility. We need humility to properly handle this new environment, this brave new world that we find ourselves thrown into. Because if we are not that way, if we are not humble, like our technocratic overlords are not humble, they're not, which is why they don't understand anything about the way that the world actually works, the way that humanity works, against the way that everything works. Larry Ellison doesn't understand that. Sam Altman doesn't understand that. Mark Zuckerberg doesn't understand that. So if we refuse to humble ourselves, like they have not humbled themselves, the Bible says those who humble themselves will be exalted, those who exalt themselves will be humbled. We will lose, and then AI will dominate the world. And it will cause great harm to the human race, like it already is right now, and will continue to do so if we're not careful. But the biggest thing that we need to remember, especially as Christians, if you're a Christian watching this, is that our worth is not found in what you build, or in what you say, in what you do, in the things, in your Tower of Babel, whatever your Tower of Babel might be. It's not just the AI people. Think about this in your personal context. Whatever your Tower of Babel is, I want to build this thing to be God. For me, it's my books, it's my creativity, it's my brand, etc. Our worth is not found in those things. It's found in Jesus. And this is the trap of the brilliant person, of the smart people, of the talented people. Whether it's athletes or billionaires or tech bros or whatever, Instagram models, many brilliant people fall for the same idolatry trap. And it's very sad to see, from like looking at the AI people, looking at the tech people. It's very sad to see many brilliant people, because I don't want to diminish their brilliance. They're brilliant people, very smart people, but they fall for the same trap of, I will build this and therefore this person will love me, appreciate me, whatever. But it won't. It just won't. It will never fulfill them at the end of the day, and it will never fulfill you at the end of the day. And so, knowing that they don't know that they don't know that their worth is inherent because God made them in his image, and he loves them, and he gives them value and worth and all those things, that is what I think, to me, makes the tech people, the AI people, the scariest. That's what makes them so scary. And also, to give everyone else some encouragement, it's what makes them so pitiful at the same time as well. It makes them like, oh wow, I really feel bad for Larry Ellison and Sam Altman and all these people, Peter Thiel. I feel bad for them because they don't know that their value is already paid for with what Jesus did on the cross and everything like that. And so we need to remember that as Christians, to kind of say that we don't need a Tower of Babel. We already have Christ. We have each other. We have our inherent value and our inherent worth. And oftentimes things that we build, the things that we want to make manifest, are the things keeping us from understanding that. And that's something that we can use to not only win this fight against the tech bro people, the AI people, but to win the fights in our own lives. You don't need to do anything, prove anything to anybody. Bought and paid for, everything. And so for anyone who needs that today, that's what I would say is don't look for your worth in anything that it shouldn't be in, because it's not. Provably not. Thank you all for watching. Own the day, open your mind, and I will see you guys next week.